Before we welcome Elizabeth, let us remind her that this is a conference for young people, so let us show our enthusiasm, our energy for Elizabeth Lazan.
Good morning. How's everyone doing? Great. Okay, good. I'm excited to be here with all of you today. Thank you to all our amazing speakers, and thank you to Felipe, who gave a very insightful and entertaining talk earlier. So when I was invited to come and speak here at the Green Summit, a few things came to my mind about finding my path to sustainability. I follow a sustainable intersection of creative storytelling with my film work, producing, eco-advocacy, and mindfulness. And it is a term I like to call eco-mindfulness. It's a compass that has guided my actions. It's been a motivator for my research, my ideas, and it's a philosophy that I hope to inspire more people with. So let's just get down to the basics, okay? The definition of eco is a habitat or environment, ecological or environmental. Mindfulness. Anyone have any idea what mindfulness is about or practice mindfulness? It's quite powerful, isn't it? Would you like to share?
Well, for me, it's just like taking time to be present in whatever it is I'm doing, and taking time to ground yourself, not necessarily giving into the noise of the world, especially in the mornings, through yoga, through prayer, or even through eating, enjoying and nourishing yourself and just being present in whatever experience that you're going through.
That was it. I didn't need this slide. Thank you. So mindfulness is the quality or state of being conscious or aware of something, just as she said. The practice of being aware of your mind, body, and feelings in the present moment. So eco-mindfulness, this is a 360 holistic approach for me when I tackle the climate crisis. And it is a philosophy that I think will shift mindsets and shift policies when we think about sustainability. So I'll give you a quick background. My work is, as Ricardo said, film, and I think of stories, I think of TV concepts, and I've created a lot of concepts for sustainability, for art, for mindfulness, and all that. And I started mindfulness training at the UCLA in Los Angeles, the Mindfulness Awareness Research Center, and a practice I call nature practice. And I will elaborate more on that later. But when I first got this theme, like I said, a few things came into my mind. And this one word kept coming up, and it really surprised me. And this word is fear. Okay, for someone who practices eco-mindfulness, fear. And I was like, why is this word in my journal all the time? So let me put this into context for you. I'm generally an easygoing, I'm quite optimistic person. I knew the climate was in danger. I knew that people were affected, but I didn't really, can you hear me when I stand like this? Yeah, okay. So I didn't really know how severe it was till I started really tuning in, till I watched planet and climate and documentaries that really affected me. And then I started thinking, okay, there's microplastics everywhere. This is in my clothes, my food. I thought about the air that I breathe, the water that I drank, the food that I ate. We have finite resources. So I didn't know the source of my consumption patterns. I didn't have any knowledge of where all that was coming from. I started asking all these questions, like how many natural resources do we have? The world is finite. So why are we pretending, or not we, but why are so many people pretending that everything is okay? My sister said to me, Elizabeth, don't start this presentation with fear. Don't be pessimistic. You're talking to a group of young people, let's be optimistic. And yes, a certain amount of fear and anxiety started my journey. I have to say that. But I think it is these emotions that motivated me to first acknowledge that there is something wrong with our planet. It is these emotions that first helped me investigate and harness my own gifts for my own purpose. To connect to my inner child of play and imagination for storytelling. And this negative concept of fear has now transformed into empowered humility and action. So what's important for me to share with you today? It doesn't matter where you started, where your climate journey is now, how far your learnings are. It doesn't matter how bizarre or funny or ridiculous your climate story is. This fear has now become an open curiosity to me because everyone has a role to play in all of this. and all of you have something to say. And true change comes from a desire to acknowledge, adapt, take action, and then inspire. So when I really started journaling with it, the theme of this is my path into sustainability. The earliest memory for me was when I was 7 years old. And my mother had a monthly subscription to the Tree of Knowledge. Does anyone know the Tree of Knowledge? I think it's a different generation. But she would buy all these graphs and binders of, the climate, wildlife, landscape, biodiversity, and I would put it into a file. And when I was 10, I remember in Australia, I was looking out into the ocean, playing with my mother's friends' kids. I had this very vivid memory. And I just wanted to stop for a second and look out. And just then, a sea lion's head popped out of the ocean. And I promise you, it was looking right at me. And that moment, right? And that moment was a moment etched in my memory forever. It was an encounter with the natural world. Why am I sharing all these stories? I think the first step into tackling the climate crisis, before we start thinking of solutions, is to have a direct, intimate, and consistent relationship with nature, our natural world, bringing our mind back to our bodies and vice versa in reciprocity with the earth. This is a wisdom that indigenous cultures have been attuned to for millennia. According to the World Wildlife Fund and National Geographic, although they comprise less than 5% of the world's population, indigenous people protect 80% of the world's biodiversity. Mind blown, right? When we understand that we are truly interconnected, that we live in a harmonious mindset, instead of one of extraction, disposability, consumption, I think this is where we will start to shift mindsets, narratives, and ultimately policies. Because we're not short on the evidence, we're not short on the technology. We have the numbers, I can give you all the stats, the figures, and all that. So why are we still running towards this crisis? Our relationship with the earth is in jeopardy. Have any of you seen this graph before? Yeah. This really hit me as well. I came across it a couple years ago. So the majority of the ways we are progressing as humanity is simply to take. But if we are all interconnected, what does progress really mean for our planet? And for what species? We can no longer claim dominance at the top of the pyramid. This world is our home, not just for humans, but for all species, mammals, and plants. And we must find a way to coexist and support each other to keep it sustainable. Shifting our mindsets is where we can take away this idea that we are at the top of the pyramid. This is where we can start to heal. My path to a sustainable journey is, I have to mention all my mentors, my family, my friends, and the youth activists that have really inspired me. And Natasha Garaudi, who I did a nature practice program with her in 2019, and that changed my mindset. So mindful meditation has been a very significant component of my life. When I met her, her nature practice intersected with my mindfulness and my eco-advocacy perfectly. I just want to say that this is something that she reminds us. With her experience, she's a documentary filmmaker, a nature practice teacher. She works with the Dalai Lama. She works with indigenous culture. She's from Peru. She's careful to note, and this is something that I take with me and I share with you, she's careful to note that what has worked for her and her students, me included, has enriched and inspired her own way of thinking. So with that, take what you will from mine, take what you will from anyone's sharings today, and find your own authentic expression, your own language with your relationship with the earth. It's your own story to share with the world. So with that, thousands of years, as I said, ancestors, indigenous cultures, they spent so much time with nature outside. They have a very natural alignment. Their well-being is connected to the earth, and they believe in vice versa, that and vice versa. And now Dr. John Spangler, who is a professor of environmental health in Harvard, he says that we spend 90% of our time indoors. Natasha calls it biological homelessness. We are enclosed in buildings all the time. Instead of being outdoors, this has consequences to our relationship with the natural world. We become separate, there's a disconnect. And this, I think, is mirrored in the declining health of our planet. We need to figure out how to bring more nature into our everyday life, and in turn, how to bring ourselves out into the natural world more often. You know, I was telling you about my time as a kid. I was giving you all these examples. Just as I shared, okay, let's just sit with this and quick exercise. Just think back of a time when you were a kid. Let's go back to our inner child. I mean, in relation to me, you're still a kid, right? But further back. Think about a time when you had an impact with the natural world. You know, it could be as simple as the trees you would see when you walk to school, or when you take your pet out for a walk, or I don't know. Just think of that time. Do you remember that feeling? Anyone? No? Yes? No? Yeah? So I like to think of this as regenerating our inner landscape. I believe that if you can restore that sense of humility and that respect that you had, like when I saw that sea lion, I paused, I just looked at it. If you can restore that sense of humility and respect for our Mother Earth, in turn, the earth will restore your creativity, your compassion. I like to think of this as the power of interconnectedness. As Dr. Andy Lecter, he is the director of Engaged Ecology at Chnumana College in the UK, he says, the power of interconnectedness, a healthy relationship with community and planet to collective healing, is not concerned about maximizing personal profit. So on my sustainable journey, one of the biggest things for me is the power of imagination. To imagine a better future, which is not only inspiring, but it is necessary for this time. When we tell stories of deep connection and enthusiasm to the climate, we in turn, like right now, we are sharing solutions because we're telling stories. We think of solutions and ideas that can lead to the betterment of the planet. We see a lot of doom and gloom daily. You know, it can stop us in our tracks. I know it stops me in mine. But it's a choice, I think, to choose joy over despair. It's a mindful choice to choose joy over despair, possibility over paralysis. We need everything and everyone to come together to solve this planet that we are hurting. Science is a necessary, extremely important way to meet the world. But it's not the only way to explore the world. What do I mean? Nurturing your intuition, your kindness, your compassion, your creation. Engaging with nature like a relative, like a friend, like a family member. Because we do live with them. We do live in nature. We are nature, essentially. So for example, to engage with nature, you know, it's common sense, right? We have to be outside, we can go to parks, we can go to oceans, but the question is how to incorporate it now in everyday lives when we are in buildings, when we're in offices. Simply invite it. And what do I mean? You know, sometimes it's hard to go outside. In Singapore, where I was born, we have the haze from the forest fires in Indonesia. Sometimes it's so bad. You know, it's really foggy. And then the pandemic, we had to stay indoors. Or if you're in the hospital, you have to stay indoors. Sometimes it's hard to go outside. So if you want to invite nature in, maybe on your break, go outside. Take a look at a tree, get some visual content. When I was in quarantine for 2 weeks in a hotel room alone, I don't recommend it, but that was in Singapore, I got my sister to deliver a plant for me, a little plant, just to have another being next to me, another life force. When you're cooking, simple. Prioritize fresh produce if you have a farmer's market, or if you can just buy something without plastic packaging. That's a way to invite more nature into your life. Or if it's safe for you and you don't want to drive, you can walk or take the bike. So these are what I like to call, and what Natasha has imparted, outdoor switches. So, you know, if you're reading a book, your journal, your Kindle, instead of a sofa, try going outside. If you're doing your prayers, if any of you pray instead of doing it on your bedside, go for a walk. Journal. Sometimes I like to take my computer and just my laptop and sit under the tree. I have this tree in Los Angeles that I sit under. socializing, maybe go for a hike or go for a barbecue instead of eating at a restaurant. You know, these are activities that are usually indoors, and I know it's common sense, but it takes mindful, intentional action to do it out of your day. To actually, how many of you went outside during the break? Oh, there you go. 2 people. So, you know, so it does take a mindful approach to actually do it, to think about it. PBS NewsHour special, they had a really interesting article about a clinic in Oakland, California. Dr. Nosheen Razani and her colleagues, she is doing park prescriptions. I love that, park prescriptions. So when patients come to her with their kids, she literally gives them a park prescription and she says, go outside in nature and tell me how much time you spend this week in nature. And she gets them to record it. They're encouraged, the kids are encouraged to run wild, to interact with things bigger than them, like the trees, and things smaller than them, like insects. Awakening our senses when we're outside resets our fight and flight responses, which is, I think, for me, very often switched on in the modern world. It gives our nervous system a chance to reset. And I think society has shifted so far away from that. As Dr. Monica, I love this quote, Monica Gagliano, she is the associate professor in evolutionary ecology in Southern Cross University. She says about the regenerating the human spirit. The core of the issue is not climate increasing in temperature, burning or melting. The issue is the source of connection and regenerating the human spirit in connection to the planet. What we need to do for the planet, and then everything else will follow out of that, is to regenerate the human spirit. The regeneration here needs to be of the human, not of the land. There are different steps, I think, to regenerating your inner landscape, and I'm here to just share a few of them. First, I believe we must ground in our lineage, our roots. Natasha first asked this to us in the practice. Who has supported your love of nature? Who? If you think back, family, a friend, maybe a celebrity you saw in a film thing, or I don't know, a mentor. Who has supported your love for nature? Just think about that. If you can feel into the roots of this person, these people, express gratitude. Okay, thank you, you brought me here. My grandmother, I call her Nonna. She used to ask me to go to the garden to pluck weeds out of her garden, and I really didn't like it. You know, I'm not a gardener. I wasn't sure at that point. I was so young. But what I didn't realize is touching that bit of flowers, I was connecting to something bigger than me. I was connecting to something in myself. I was connecting to the natural world, and for that, I thank her. So you root into these people, you root into films, you root into choreography, dancing, you root into poetry, into books, into paintings. You root into all these things that brought you your love for nature. I mean, essentially why you're here, for the planet. And then once you root into this impact, acknowledge your strength. Acknowledge your, I think Max said yesterday, the speaker, acknowledge your superpower. Acknowledge yourself. The source of why you are here, the source of why you are supporting the climate cause. Sometimes I feel like I'm one person, you know, in the big global movement, we talk about small actions, I get dissuaded, I get paralyzed. Why am I doing this? But then I go back to my climate compass, I call it. What is your climate compass? That's my roots. When they are strong just like a tree, that's when I can open my branches. Considering your branches, what can I, if you ask yourself, what can I offer back to nature that has offered so much back to me? I think Felipe as well said yesterday when we were up here, your tentacles, he used the word, and that brought me back to branches. Your tentacles. How would you like to direct the energy that you have received from nature to nature, to extend your powers, to extend your gifts back to the planet? And as you go on your own sustainable journey, as I'm still on mine, it's never ending. That's how you can expand your climate voice. And that's how you can explore your climate voice. And I realize when you spend time in nature, these things will just happen naturally. You will recognize the things that awaken your senses and imagination to generate your human spirit and in turn regenerate and serve the environment. I mean, do you notice how you feel after a walk in nature? Anyone? How does it make you feel? Oh, yes. Fresh. Yeah. Maybe we should do this talk outside. For me, one of my personal habits is I like to go for a walking meditation every morning. There's the science behind it. I can give you that. Dr. Andrew Huberman, he says it's good for your circadian rhythm and blah, blah, blah. I agree. I also agree that it slowly awakens our senses. It gives you clarity, grounding. It gives me more space to take on the day, to take on the problems, or to take on the climate issue. Robin Kimmerer, author of the beautiful book, Braiding Sweetgrass, she says, the land is the real teacher. All we need as students is mindfulness. So next time you walk outside, I just offer this to you. What do you see? What do you taste? What do you hear? Just bring all that in when you start your day. And I'm sharing this practice with you because I want you to connect to a deeper source of why you're here. Not just in this auditorium, but why you're here on this planet. And I think to see real, conscious, collective change, it starts with adjusting our mindsets. Then we can see concrete, impactful shifts. So the question today is, what seeds are you planting today for this summit? What is your intention to be here? And what is it you're hoping to feel? What is it your branches will extend to? So we know trees are good for us, right? I mean, just the science around it. This is from One Tree Planted, an organization that I volunteer with. In One Tree Planted, they say trees can reduce ambient temperatures by up to 8 degrees Celsius. With more than 50% of the world's population living in cities, a number expected to increase by 66% in the year 2050, pollution and overheating are becoming a real threat. Fortunately, a mature tree can absorb an average of 22 pounds of carbon dioxide per year, making cities a healthier, safer place to live. So we know trees are beneficial for our lungs and for the lungs of our planet. So with this statistic, how do we translate this into everyday consciousness and for urban restructuring of our lands? This question led me to Kristen Kay, an award-winning novelist, and she's an eco-literary author. And her campaign has given rise to a global tree tagging campaign. And I'll tell you a bit more about that. And it's been seeding the world since 2012 in 12 countries worldwide. And I've had the pleasure of being an ambassador of interconnection for her. So what is tree tagging? Well, these are pictures. This is her book and her tag. So basically, I organized a group of friends to come together, and they wrote down short phrases or a word that inspires their love for nature. We shared stories of how trees have inspired us, and we stood in a circle, and we tied this around a tree. Don't worry, all the materials were compostable, so it's okay. And tree tags can work in communities, like she did it with the Ngora Girls' School in Uganda. It's such a simple idea, right? So simple, but so effective. So I'm asking you, you could have a simple idea. Don't discredit any of your simple, small ideas, because it can have a profound effect. So what little fun projects could you come up with, just for now, that can create an impact? Because she did this in 2012, and now I'm doing it, and now I'm talking about it. It just keeps going. So what inspired me about this collaboration is learning about trees. Her campaign invites us to rethink our relationship to trees. I think Janice said yesterday about the logo of the Green Summit. It's a tree, and that really got me thinking about this. The complex symbiotic relationship with the forest does mimic our own relationship above the ground. Why does it hold such a special place in my heart? Well, tons of research, such as Dr. Suzanne Simard, she said that trees communicate their root systems across the entire forest floor. So they send chemical signals to each other through a fungal network for the whole benefit of the grove. So essentially, yeah, trees talk to each other. So our brains are similar to these root systems. Information moves through our neural networks. At the end of a neuron, we have a root structure called a dendrite. And fun fact, the word dendrite comes from the word dendron, which means tree. It's all connected. There is something, so just visuals to show how interconnected and how similar and how anthropomorphic about trees and humanity. So when I started learning and reading more about this, I started getting more mindful of a world alongside ours. The interconnection between the wood wide web to our own communities above the ground. There are many stories hidden within trees. I mean, they've been here way longer than us, and they're going to be here when we're gone. Think about the fact that trees stand in one place and yet affect the whole world around them for biodiversity, for wildlife, for carbon sequestration, everything, right? So again, we are running so fast in a modern society. We think we have so much to do, which we do. But if we had to reflect on one thing that we could offer, one word, or one action that we could take that could benefit all, just reflect on that. Do you have paper and pen? All of you? No, not really? Yeah, I know. Maybe your phone. If you don't have paper, I love writing because it's analog, but if not, take out your phone and just write down just a couple minutes, just maybe a word or a word that comes to your mind from this. A word that is sparked from this conversation right now. And if anyone wants to share, or you could, if you don't want to write it down, that's fine. If it's in your mind, that's okay too. Yeah, any word. Does anyone want to share a word? Yes, please.
I thought of growth.
Growth.
Because this whole symposium, the conference, what we're doing is promoting growth in our minds, in our communities, to grow beyond what we are, and to think of a better future for ourselves, and not just ourselves, but everyone else that's in the world, including environment, people, animals, all those types of things. So growth, yeah.
I love that. Thank you. Any other word? Yes.
I wrote the word ima, which in Hebrew means mother.
Oh.
Just because this is, parental for us. It's Mother Nature for us, and also because I got my love of nature from my own mother.
Oh. Thanks, Mom. Anyone else? Yes. Oh.
Intimacy. Yeah. So whenever I feel I'm not feeling well, I go out and I kind of even like pick up a leaf or something, and I take it back and I keep it in my journal, and I go and look back. It's something which is like tangible reality, and it is not in my head. It is nothing. It's just a leaf, and it makes me feel comfortable and acceptable when I'm feeling low. So yeah.
And I'll clap for growth too. So, thank you so much. Such a simple thing, right? So, this is when we write them down, this word, when we share, as thank you for sharing, we change this word into a shape. This dream, this thought becomes an intention, which becomes our action, which shapes our world. This is where I believe interconnection lives between us. Have any of you seen the film Kiss the Ground on Netflix? Basically, he believes in a regenerating this approach, which has been around, since indigenous cultures, but a regenerative approach and holistic approach to land stewardship, known as carbon farming or regenerative farming. Because all our food, our fiber, our clothing, whatever we consume goes back down to the waterways, to the oceans, to the soil. So when I started practicing mindfulness in my everyday life, I started asking climate questions such as, who grows my food? Who makes my clothes? Again, it's down to mindset. When I started digging deeper into the research, I asked myself, what am I paying attention to? What is my story? We can get into food waste, we can get into fast fashion. All these are part of the carbon footprint conversations. River Blue, another documentary that was part of the Singapore Eco Film Festival, it exposes how fast fashion pollutes our waterways, our drinking resources from the chemical dyes down to the soil, choking our oceans, the degradation of our lands. So at this moment, I think we touched upon this yesterday as well, I want to talk quickly about mindful consumerism. Do you all know what that is? Yeah, so mindful consumption refers to being conscious about your clothes, about your choices, about your food as a consumer, basically purchasing power, right? Money talks. So thinking carefully about the consequences your action has on the planet. So as we think about these mindful consumptions, we have about 8 billion people in our planet right now. The earth is finite, we have finite resources. And we're all consuming in this disposable way. We lack this circular economy. We just take, throw, buy, take, throw, buy. I'll speak for myself. You know, there are moments, it's a constant learning opportunity for me. I have to think about, oh, wait, this is a moment. Do I know where this is from? Do I know what I'm getting myself into? And I keep going back to these questions. So as we approach the holiday season, I just want to offer these. I don't know if you can see it. Maybe the font is not as clear, but can I get this locally? Oh yeah, you can, okay. Can I reduce my carbon footprint? Buy local instead of Amazon. Okay. Pause and reflect on my shopping habits. Do I really need this? Can I repurpose, reuse, regift existing products? For gifting, maybe you can ask someone, is there a cause or charity that you're passionate about that I can donate to? Can I gift that? Is this product made to last? How many uses can I get out of it? This is all shifting our consumption patterns. And I don't mean consumption in tangible, also consumption in what we're watching, consuming, what we're digesting, social media. Let's be mindful about what we're taking in as we craft, as we build our sustainable voice, our climate voice. It can be intimidating. It makes you freeze, sometimes feel paralyzed, almost surrender to making these deep systemic changes. Sometimes when we're in the face of too many options, too many light solutions, we can get in denial, or it's better to just, let's just make it happen. I mean, let's just do it. We believe there's nothing we can do. But I think if there's one takeaway today that I'd like to say is that perfect isn't the goal right now. Being better is simply enough. You know, a lot of associations with climate change are producing these feelings of guilt, these feelings of shame, these feelings of anxiety. I think this is true. This is, you know, we need to honor that. We are feeling anxious. And we need all the help we can to avert the climate crisis. But then this also got me thinking, okay, so yeah, we feel anxious, we feel helpless sometimes. So what motivation do I need to make everyday substantial actions? What kind of joy can I spark in my regeneration? So for example, when I had a very bad case of gastric issues, you know, my nutritionist told me, okay, Elizabeth, just cut down on a bunch of meat, okay? She wasn't climate, I mean, I don't know, but I don't think she meant it from a climate perspective. She just said, cut down on your meat, just eat more vegetables. So the motivation to cut down on meat was also encouraged by knowing that it would cut down my carbon footprint. So being mindful about my eating habits was also me being mindful about the environment. And the same could be said vice versa. When you're mindful about the environment, you're indirectly helping your well-being and your health. Commuting to work, same thing. Perhaps you want more sunshine, more vitamin D. You know, this brought me to Dr. Elizabeth Dunn's work, founder of Happy Climate Interactive Workshop. She said people are going to have to make substantial behavioral, this is entrenched in us, behavioral changes to tackle climate change. But that also creates an opportunity for people to change in the way that are good for their happiness, for their well-being, because it's all interconnected. This is my 360 holistic eco-mindfulness approach when tackling the climate crisis, to encourage myself and people to lean more into cutting high carbon consumption behaviors. Or when you speak to others about the climate crisis, it can be hard, but by emphasizing to them that, okay, this is not about deep sacrifice, so they don't feel weak or shameful or inadequate, just having a mindful approach to personal changing circumstances. Think about its overall well-being. From this, I realized by sparking joy in my own climate journey through small actions is a way to transform my own eco-anxiety. So the first step, acknowledge the situation, accept the seriousness of the situation, talk about it with your friends, your family, but then meeting your fears with an attitude of curiosity and openness and compassion to yourselves and to others. Some people are coming into this information for the first time. You know, if you push, it's uncomfortable to digest. So approach all of it, including yourself, with kindness and compassion. Another step is to be part of the solution, taking the time to set a compass for your voice, like being here, journaling, joining events, extending your branches with an open mind. The world has so many incredible stories to tell. And we need all of your voices in each of these stories. Every single one of you has a place in this story. Everyone gets moved differently. You know, different things move us about the climate message, but the common ground that everyone relates to and will shift their priorities is based on your own message, your own authentic climate story. So how do you reach these people? How do you know what your climate compass is? I call it my North Star on my path to sustainability, to sustain the journey. So I use a method called Ikigai. Do we have any Japanese participants here? Japanese? Oh, you know, yes, Ikigai. Yeah, perhaps, I'll elaborate, and if you have any thoughts on it, I'd love to hear too. So, oh yes, okay.
For me, finding ikigai is like finding a cause or purpose that I live for. I live to accomplish this. I live to see this, do this. That's ikigai.
Beautiful. So, again, I didn't need this slide. It's a Japanese concept meaning your reason for being. It combines the term iki, meaning alive, and gai, meaning worth. Michiko Kumona, I hope I'm saying that right. She's a Japanese psychologist. She has said that ikigai is a state of well-being that arises from devotion to activities one enjoys, which also brings a sense of fulfillment. So this is my own version of it. It's my ikigai. You can call it, this is how I found my sweet spot in the middle, my climate compass. So the first question is, what sparks joy for you? What gives you, what do you feel happy? What makes you happy? What gives you purpose? And then the other question is, what are you good? What are you great at? What are your branches? What are your gifts? What is your superpower? And embrace it. Be open to it. What does the world need? And then you combine it into that sweet spot. And so I'll share with you mine and my journaling process. What sparks joy for me? Just to give you an example, films give me a lot of joy. Stories, sharing stories and exploring the world. I love to bridge. I'm from Singapore and Australia, and I love to bridge East and West cultures. What are you good and great at? I love writing. I love facilitating, hosting. What does the world need? Interconnection, climate solutions. This is mine. So integrating these has been my action, my own way to claim power back in my eco-anxiety and find peace within so I can do the work outwardly. So it's an intersection of your passion, your talent, your purpose to support community. And this might take a while, so I'll go back so you don't get to see, it's cleaner for you to take a screenshot if you want. This might take a while to find. This might constantly be evolving. It could be a useful visual in your own journey. But I hope you can find some benefit from it to finding that sweet spot for you, your voice, because that's how you communicate your purpose and create an impactful change. The power of your imagination and any way you wish to tell your story will contribute to the climate conversation. As Andy Goldsworthy, he is a sculptor, a photographer, and an environmentalist who uses site-specific sculpture to talk about the planet. This is his art. And he says, we often forget that we are nature. Nature is not something separate from us. So when we say that we have lost our connection to nature, we have lost our connection to ourselves. It's like any relationship with nature, right? With any relationship with a loved one, there'll be moments of pain, moments of sorrow, moments of hurt, moments of anger. We go through all the spectrum of emotions, but moments of joy, and moments of immense gratitude. We are all children of the land. We have to remember that. And by being here, you are consciously planting your seeds to flow into your branches, to build and touch community with action and purpose. And once you are mindful of your purpose, you can create your own sustainability journey. Our imaginations can lead us into a different ending. And with that, I would like to close the session with a meditation practice for a couple of minutes. Okay, I've been leading mindfulness online practices, and this meditation is for anyone. If you feel overwhelmed, you're curious, you're not sure, you're inspired, or you simply want to just close your eyes and take a break, it's fine. And just give gratitude of how you came here today. Whether it was a 2-hour flight, a 20-hour flight, who supported your journey in coming here today? Soak in this planet's love deeply with community around you, with friends, with the reason that you are here. And as you lean into this gratitude, remember that the earth right now is holding you. It is supporting you. It is guiding you to your purpose. This is exactly where you belong at this moment. With that, if you can set a positive intention for the rest of the day, for the summit ahead, listen to that whisper that comes to you. And if your mind wanders, it's okay. Just bring it back to this present moment. Bring it back to the sound of my voice. Softening into the seat, releasing any tension. Just simply be here. There is nowhere else you need to be right now. From this place of inner calm, think of a situation that you would like to help our planet with. Or imagine an image that inspires you, whatever comes to mind. You don't need to overthink it. It could be a simple vision of you experiencing joy in nature. What can you see in this image? Reflect on how you can bring your own unique, inspired self to support this vision. Listening softly, but listening carefully to your inner voice, the nature whisper that's coming to you. Now, if you can slowly take a deep breath in and release it with a sound. Yeah. Now slowly open your eyes. Just sit with this image. If you want to write it down, if you just want to remember it here, or if you just want to sit with it, that's fine. Any way is fine. If nothing in particular came to you, no worries at all. Just a good relaxation. Just simply sit in your presence and engage with it. And I just want to say, may our time here together just bring planetary action and health. And may we continue to inspire and support each other. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing. I'm Eunice from the Chinese University of Hong Kong.
Hi.
I have a question about like bringing eco-mindfulness into education.
Yes.
Because now that I reflect about the education I have on climate change, I realized it was all on science, data. It was well, of course, it let me know the truth about the reality we face and all the challenges. But I also feel like it's very impersonal. So sometimes people would be like, well, it doesn't really connect to me. I feel like it's not my problem. And so I'm thinking, what are your thoughts on, like incorporating eco-mindfulness into education so more people can find their reconnection with the nature? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Thank you, Eunice, right? Yeah. I think for eco-mindfulness into schools, as I showed earlier, for example, the tree tags, that was through a Zoom, actually. So they basically sent the tree tags, the books, to this school in Uganda, and then they shared their experience online. I think how you can incorporate it in schools, simple ideas like that. Maybe bring them out for a walk, maybe get like the park prescriptions that I was saying earlier, gathering up maybe every Monday. Monday is Connecting with Nature Day. There's a trend that was going on in the 90s, Meatless Mondays. I think it's still happening now, but maybe something like that. A day just in nature for half an hour. 15 minutes, depending on the school's curriculum, but something as simple as that. And then a sharing moment. Reflection is always nice because it's community. So I think that's an example that you can incorporate that into schools. And stories, I think stories, to share stories. Tell them maybe every week an encounter with nature, or maybe once a month an encounter with nature that they had, and share that. I think that stories can also help to sustain the ideas. Yeah. Thank you.
For delegates standing at the back.
Oh, hi, yes.
Hi.
Hi.
Is this on? Okay. Sorry, I'm a bit tall. Thank you so much. I loved your speech.
Oh, thank you.
I'm Ashley. I'm from Perth, Australia.
Perth. Yes, my mom's there. Yeah.
You mentioned Indigenous populations have been protecting the environment for millennia. I'm very passionate about improving the acknowledgement and, empowerment of supporting, more representation in that kind of area. In Australia, Indigenous elders and knowledge holders do not receive the platform or political respect simply because they did not finish high school, mostly because of the stolen generation, and we were not considered human until 1967. So how would you recommend I influence mentalities or policy to empower Indigenous environmental management and support the cross-cultural holistic approach to sustainability?
Thank you for sharing. It's interesting because a lot of the practices, like for example, carbon farming or regenerative agriculture, that I spoke about with the film Kiss the Ground. All those things are actually Indigenous methods. That is Indigenous wisdom. It's just the language, and of course with science and technology, that has helped reframe it for different audiences throughout this time. And I think just going back to the basics, I think if we can encourage schools to give more funding to these Indigenous groups, if we can invite elders, we say elders in the United States. I'm not sure if you say that in Perth. Yeah, elders. If you invite more elders into schools. I did a tree planting event a couple of weeks ago, and they brought in Indigenous speakers to talk about the tree, to bless the tree, to talk about the soil. So I think you're on the right track with what you're thinking, how to incorporate Indigenous wisdom. I think the stats show, they prove, and I know sometimes that doesn't mean anything, but I think if you bring in these elders into schools and have a support, maybe start a support system around it in schools, and have them share their stories. I hope that answers your question. Yeah. And if we can talk more too after. yeah, if you can speak more about it. Thank you for your question. Yes.
Let's take the questions from the delegates standing at the back, and then we'll go to the front. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Elizabeth. Sorry, Miss Elizabeth. So
No.
I'm actually really glad you quoted Robin Wall Kimmerer, Braiding Sweetgrass, because I really enjoyed that book as well, and I really recommend everyone to read it. So Robin Wall Kimmerer is Indigenous, and in the book she shares the gravity of being in a room, and with 7 people, the only 7 remaining people in the world who speak her Indigenous language, and it was a very sobering read for me, and I really enjoyed it. And a lot of it was on Indigenous wisdom, and but okay, I wanted to ask about, you said that sometimes, there are climate actions that are easy, but I also wanted to ask about the difficult ones. So, for instance, like, I think there are a lot of sacrifices that come when you consider your footprint. Like, for example, flying a long distance is one of the worst things you can do.
Yes.
So, like, for instance, like one 12-hour flight from London to New York is often more than the carbon emission of like the someone from the 50 poorest nations for an entire year, so that one flight alone. So I'm just saying that, for example, you have family in somewhere else and you really want to see them for Christmas or whatever, but these sacrifices are hard. And what do you say about how can we practice gratitude in these times?
Yeah, I
Thank
know.
you.
Thank you. It's quite hard, isn't it, to think about that? I thought about that here too, travel. But it's like the elephant in the room for our modern society. I think intentional travel, that's what I come back to. I try to make it mindful about intentional travel. So if I'm traveling here, what can I do? And I'm not saying all carbon offset companies are legit. You have to do your research. But like Cool Effect is one thing that I donated money to. So it's like, how do you offset a little bit of that? So that's one way we can try. The main thing is not whether we're doing it perfect, that we're trying to do it. So that's one thing you can do, Cool Effect. And I don't think one size fits all when you think about this. I think, we have to see our family. I have family in all over the world. I have to rush to their side. I don't think we should shame the aviation industry, but we also shouldn't shame ourselves. I think we should put pressure on planes to maybe use more biofuels. I think Qantas, anyone from Australia? Yeah, I think Qantas is starting to use biofuels as well. So we put pressure on more planes. I mean, technology has to keep up with it, but I think we put more pressure on that too. And I don't know if this is true, but I heard if you pack lighter, it's better for your carbon footprint. So only bring your essentials, because of weight, I don't know. But I tried that. It's very limiting, but yes, it's good. So all these little things, I think if you're mindful about your choices and intentional, and if you can do some action to offset that, I'm not saying that covers or sugarcoats the reality. Like again, I said acknowledge the reality, but shaming in a modern society, if someone is sick, if you have to see your relatives, you have to go to their side. And that is a privilege too, to be able to do that. So I think we have to acknowledge all of the above. Thank you.
The delegate standing at the mic and then at the
Hi,
front.
can you hear me? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Miss Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Deeply resonate well with your message. As a ecologist and wildlife biologist in training, I do feel deeply that us as humans, we are meant for locomotion, and the fact that you mentioned we are nature, but the fact that we are always indoors and not exposed to nature, I think it's a very, very unhealthy thing to do. And even in Singapore, my country, the government has declared a war on diabetes because the increasing rates of diabetes is alarming in Singapore because of how we as human beings are not exposed to locomotion and we are not moving much at all. So for those of you who are privileged enough to be living in areas with beautiful nature, or even because in Singapore there's no nature at all, I mean, it's very limited. So for those of you who are exposed to very beautiful nature, I implore upon you and your family members or even your friends to encourage them and yourself to just go out and connect with nature. I think it's something that we should all do as humans. So next, you mentioned something about the ikigai. So it's also something that I've thought about quite deeply because as a scientist, an aspiring scientist, I feel that scientists, we are not paid as much as other careers, or there's not much prospect, especially in certain areas of the world. And so how do you then bridge this gap? Because in Ikigai, you mentioned what sparks joy, what are you good at, and what does the world need. But there's also this pragmatic aspect of what earns you money. So how then can you bridge this gap between finding your Ikigai and finding your place in the real world or in reality? So what do you have to say to like aspiring scientists like myself or other individuals out here? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Great questions. So the first question, Singapore. I'm familiar with Singapore. There isn't, the mountains and the hills and all that, but there is the nature reserves, there is the botanic gardens, there is parks, even on a small scale, just being under a tree, that's something that can heal. That's something that you can connect with nature with. Having a plant, composting in your little balcony, maybe touching the soil, planting every Sunday, having a bed of plants. Like when I was in quarantine, having a plant next to me. So those are little examples in cities and how you can incorporate nature into your everyday life. Take a train to Malaysia. Malaysia has a lot of landscape. It's not far. It's like maybe, 5 hours or 4, I don't know. Take a train, make a little journey out of that for yourself. That's something to incorporate, I would say, nature into your everyday life in cities. What earns you money as a scientist? If I'm understanding that question right, I think that is why the Ikigai keeps expanding. It keeps evolving. I think that it's a journey. To sustain your sustainable journey, you constantly have to be mindful about asking these questions to yourself, and then just ask yourself, what is priority to you? I think keep going back to your roots. What is priority for you? How do you really want to serve? And it's not exclusive. I don't believe there's this, when I was growing up I started acting really young, and there was this notion that if you're an artist, you're a struggling artist, it's going to be very hard for you. And I choose to not succumb to that notion. I choose to shift my mindset around that. You don't, as a scientist, believe that you will get the funding. It's not easy, but I'm saying the Ikigai will keep shifting as you move along that journey. And just really think about what is priority to you. And we do live in a modern day society. We do have bills to pay. We do have things to take care of our finances for. But I think if you just remember your climate compass and just keep following that, and just keep going back to your North Star and remember why, always ask the why, and then the how will follow naturally for you. And if you're not sure, just go under a tree and journal. I'm not saying that's the solution, but I'm saying that gives you the reflection. Yeah. Thank you.
Right. We have 2 questions at the front. So the delegate with a black vest, yes.
Okay, hi. First, Elizabeth, thank you for your talk. I loved our conversation about Indigenous knowledge. Mm-hmm. And one of the big blessings attending my school, Brigham Young University of Hawaii, is learning from my peers from across the Pacific and about how sustainable their traditional land use management is. And I truly believe part of that is cultivating the relationship with nature and with the land and the ocean. My question for you is, what does the scalability of that look like in a world with a growing population where food security is an issue, water security is an issue? How can we maintain that reverence for the land and the sacredness for the land while still supporting such a growing population?
I need to think about that. If I had the answer, I'd probably be solving the world's problems. So I think the first thing that came to my mind, I think Indigenous cultures have been doing this, as I said, the quote, what was it, by Nat Geo, 5% of the world's populations, but they protect 80% of the world's biodiversity, right? So I think governments and people who make policy decisions have to include Indigenous voices in the room. I do not think there are enough voices in the room. And I think once the voices are in the room, like my voice, your voice, we just had an interaction. Once those voices are in the room, those questions will be posed and the action will follow. It's a virtuous cycle, right? And then governments, technology can work hand in hand. It's not one or the other. You know, it's not binary. I think we need the technology. We are evolving. Technology also gives employment to many people. So we can mindfully incorporate that, but listening to Indigenous. So right now, my answer to that is include them in the room. It's not some woo-woo, random knowledge. This is knowledge that I think can save the world, right? So I think that by combining that knowledge, by combining it with technology and science, that's how we can navigate when we upscale, when we start feeding more people. And then, of course, other things like, you know, eating less meat, I mean, all this is part of it. Food waste, you know, I think in Singapore, only 1 in 6 Singaporeans know about the food waste problem. This is by ReFed, a nonprofit organization. I think just knowledge in all areas, because it's all interconnected. I think that can help. Yeah.
Yes, would you like to ask your question?
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for your talk. I just wanted to make a comment just to give a positive feedback of what you were saying. Thank you so much for acknowledging Indigenous cultures. And also a special thank you for actually acknowledging the Japanese representative from the country who actually understands the culture of Ikigai. So thank you so much. Just also wanted to just say thank you so much for also bringing a lot of enlightenment. Growing up in poverty, we were told that going to the big city is the best way to live a life, and it was looked down on us, for some of us who lived in homelands and rural areas. Growing up, we used to do bird watching, listening to birds and animals talking. In Zimbabwe, it's a great stone that sits on the middle of the country, and we used to go copy climbing, and in our culture we are always advised to sit in the sun for 30 minutes a day.
Wow.
And it was mandatory.
Wow.
But we never used to understand, and we used to think it was really backward and rural. So now I'm going to go back home and apologize to my family and realize that all they were doing was eco-mindfulness. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Gave me a little goosebumps there. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Anyone? Yes. Oh, sorry. Why don't you do it? Your job. I'm like, I don't know.
So the delegate with the white vest.
Oh, yes, thank you. Hi, I am Chen Zhang from China.
Hi.
And I want to ask some questions about just the topic. So, promoting green and low carbon development is the international trend and the general trend. And some green economy has become the commanding height of global industrial competition. Maybe to speed up the green transformation of the development mode is to completely change the past practice of sacrificing the ecological environment for temporary economic growth as soon as possible. Maybe promote the formation of a green and low carbon production mode and lifestyle, and fundamentally is the contradiction between economic development and resource and environmental constraints. So do you think there is a balance between green development and economy, as some enterprises may be facing the need to do some green transformation? We can call, but we cannot control some behaviors. Yeah, so I want to call some yours people to find a balance between the green development and the economy. Yeah, to find a balance of it.
The balance is hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, if I am understanding the question, I think you're asking the balance between economic development in terms of not sacrificing ecological welfare. Yeah. I know the balance. So I think that's why I think eco-mindfulness, this 360 kind of mind-body holistic approach, needs to be in government, needs to be in the conversations that we have. Because I think when you understand that nature has given you so much, you will naturally treat it with respect. And is that what you're saying?
But actually, in my country, there's some company has.
And where are you from again?
China.
China, yes. Okay.
Yeah. And some it maybe have some cases about explore the balance, like the program names 蚂蚁森林. It can be how to say promote everyone's footprint, to record the footprint and turn it onto some how to say maybe the rainbow or maybe the fund to some how to say developing regions, and to reuse the how to say the fund or reuse the footprint how to say just explore the balance of it. So I want to say that with yours people, we can find more how to say create a platform to join together to how to say to promote these SDGs, your concept of the SDGs, whether or not to control some behaviors. Because I think maybe the awareness may be the most important thing.
The what? The
awareness.
Awareness, yes.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's like in China. I'm not sure the awareness, but I think stories, is that something that maybe we should talk after, so I can just focus on you one-on-one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, look for me after.
Thank you.
Because I don't want to not miss your question, but I really want to understand what we're communicating.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so thank you. Look for me.
Okay.
Yes, okay.
Hi, I'm Vinara.
Hi.
So first of all, thank you so much for your presentation, especially the meditation session towards the end. I found it very relaxing. I was very excited to hear that you were a filmmaker, because me, myself, like I'm a video editor as well and an aspiring filmmaker. So as you know, like more and more political messages are being ingrained in today's film scene, and some quite successfully and some not so much. So, but something that I've noticed is that climate change and other environmental issues are something that we very rarely see, especially in these blockbuster films that we see today, and these films that millions of people go to watch. Yeah. So as a filmmaker, why do you think this is? Is it because we aren't able to combine these issues into the scripts organically, or is it another reason?
I think it's all of the above. I think we're not able to combine these ideas into scripts organically, and I think the people themselves are not conscious of it. And I think films don't want to get too political sometimes, because when a film gets political, then it's like, oh, it's a documentary, you know, and it's not part of the conversation, the everyday conversation. I mean, what was that film that just came out? Don't Look Up? Yeah. So that is a way of you like that? Feels a good one. That was a way of incorporating it full on, right in your face. But they use parody, they use comedy. So I think that's part of it too, is knowing, as you explore your purpose as a filmmaker, as you explore your voice in this, do you want to write it in terms of a narrative, non-scripted? Do you want it to be a comedy? Do you want it, you know, you just start journaling, start writing all these questions and ask yourself, what is the message, your climate compass, what is the message you're trying to say? Animation, Spirited Away, also talks about climate change. I mean, just so many films. Another film, there was a film, WALL-E, yeah. The director actually said that they didn't mean to make it climate conscious. Yeah. Right? But it is, and it was, and they didn't want to get too political. But I think if it is in your essence, if it is in your voice, you will find a way to reach the right people. As Spirited Away has reached some people, as Don't Look Up has reached some people, but not others, there's so many different types of people. Your voice will find a way to attract the right people who are meant to spread that message. Yeah. Yeah.
Right, let's see if we have questions on the other side of the room. Yes, thank you.
Hi, my name is Layla. I'm born and raised in the Philippines and now residing in Australia. First of all, I'd like to thank you for your presentation. It was really lovely.
Thank you.
I noticed that the presentation focused on the interconnectedness of green space, so trees, and humans as a species. The park prescription was really interesting, but I'd like to know more about blue space interventions. So blue space is in beaches, rivers, lakes, to better human health, especially physical and mental health. I study environmental health at Griffith University in a coastal community in Australia. And surprisingly, not a lot of people know what environmental health is exactly as a course. And so, in a gist, my course revolves around the physical, biological, and social effects of the environment on population health, on human health. The most intriguing thing I've learned from my course is that there's a plethora of green space solutions addressing human health. However, an extensive number of research studies mention the lack of blue space interventions or encounters to date. So my question is, considering how coastal communities are projected to keep on growing in the future, do you know of any emerging blue space encounters, interventions, or projects in the context of eco-mindfulness? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I will speak for my experience, blue space intervention. I live in Los Angeles, and Surf Rider Foundation is an example of doing that. They, I think in any city or country or town you're in, there will be beach cleanups, right? There will be one of that. So I think that's an example of just getting people out in nature to do the basic thing. Surf Rider Foundation organizes that monthly or bi-monthly. I'm not sure about organizations where you are, but I think by searching for these organizations, and I talk about trees, but there's so much beauty in the ocean. There's so much beauty I talk about soil, so much beauty in water. And it's all connected. There's water and soil. There's the sand bed under the sea. I mean, it's all this, it's all the message that you're trying to say with the science of whatever space that you're looking at. So I say just research more into blue space intervention in the places you're in. And maybe I organize tree tags, organize beach conversations. If it's legal in your beach, have a beach fire and sit around it. Sometimes the element of fire, the element of water, all that can encourage people to also be more reflective. Just maybe combining these two factors. I'm not sure if that helps, but yeah, thank you.